That is how sad things have been since the promulgation of the Constitution. On this chapter 4, the government overally, in terms of how it has implemented this chapter, the government has breached the Constitution under the Bill of Rights more than it has upheld, promoted, or protected the rights of Kenyans since 2010. And therefore, if I was to give marks out of 10, I will give the government 3 out of 10 when it comes to this chapter on the Bill of Rights. It is so important to me because some listeners here would know the torrid situation that we have gone through since the promulgation of the Constitution, especially under the current regime and administration headed by President William Ruto. Things have been very nasty. Things have been very bad when it comes to upholding Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Things have been so bad that when we come to the executive, where I'll be commenting a little bit, it has been a litany of abuse of power and abuse of office when it comes to the Bill of Rights, which is in chapter 4. Chapter 5, comrades, ladies and gentlemen, talks about land and the environment. Again, this is a chapter where a lot of things are new. I would request all of us to again go to Article 40 and Article 60. Article 40 talks about the right to property. And Article 60 is so important. It guides on our issues of land, and the principles that guide land rights in our country shall be implemented and upheld. So I would request that you look at both Article 40 and Article 60, because the principles of land policy are in Article 60, yet in Article 40, you see the articles that guide on the right to property in this country. This article is so important that you will see that many Kenyans have been displaced, have been uprooted from their residencies and their areas of settlement without compensation, without alternative areas to live. So that you actually can conclude that in Kenya, it's only the rich and powerful who have the right to property. All of us are vulnerable. Government can be able to institute measures at any time, which can be able to displace us and lead us to landlessness and even without a home to sleep in. So that is why introduction to chapter 5 is so important, because it talks about land and the environment. Our environment as a country is in a very bad shape. If you go down to the River Athi and you see the amount of sewage and raw poison that is being poured into our rivers every single day, the fertilizers that are destroying our rivers and our environment across the country, from the highlands to the agricultural areas to the desert areas and the silt, the destruction of the environment that is going on in Kenya is indeed mind-boggling. It is scary if we were to be very, very honest with ourselves. So I'll leave the chapter on land there so that we can be able to move now to the chapter on leadership and integrity. My brothers and sisters, chapter 6 is a very important chapter in this constitution. It is probably the only chapter that is new in this constitution, the chapter on leadership and integrity. Why is it the only chapter that is new? Because after 50 years of struggle and bad governance, we had come to the conclusion that the problem in our country is the problem of leadership and integrity, the lack of it. Yet, this is the chapter that has been disregarded completely under this new constitution. Yet, it is supposed to be the chapter that was supposed to be honored and to be the turning point, the pivot of the transformation of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, I am saddened to report that this chapter 6 has been disregarded almost in total. Even the establishment of the EACC has not helped matters. And currently, as you know, EACC's chairperson is none other than Emeritus Bishop Dr. David Oginde of CITAM. Dr. Oginde, Bishop, was actually our chairman at the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. But as you can see, things have not gone very well, even under his leadership. Remember that immediately before him, the chairperson was Bishop Wabukala, the emeritus Archbishop of the Anglican Church. We have a massive problem in our country when it comes to values and virtues. And yet, more than 83% of our country professes Christianity. We have a massive challenge when it comes to chapter 6, because chapter 6 is only academic. It's only there in the Constitution. But if you were to go article by article, you will realize that there is practically none of those articles that has been upheld or observed. If chapter 6 alone on leadership and integrity were to be implemented faithfully in this country, we will not even recognize the country that will be birthed out of chapter 6. But unfortunately, it has been ignored and it has been observed in breach, as we have already said. So we gained for ourselves a massively elaborate and strong chapter whose implementation, unfortunately, has been near to nil. So we have to ask ourselves, how come that we are at 3% of this country, but values and virtues have not been upheld, when even our own president and deputy president are devout Christians? I have no answers for you, brothers and sisters. I am here to take us through so that we can be able to ponder and reflect. Now, to increase our movement forward, we look at chapter 7 on the representation of the people. Let me acknowledge that if I was to give marks out of 4 out of 10, I'll give this chapter 4.5. Because things have been streamlined far much better than they were under the previous constitution, where boundaries used to be gerrymandered. So under this chapter now, there is sanity when it comes to boundaries that guide the representational units of our people. IBC has been established as a constitutional commission, and it has been given teeth, except that it has not used those teeth to streamline our politics and bring hygiene. So I'll give this chapter 4.5 out of 10 in terms of its implementation, which tells you that 15 years later, we have a whole 5.5 that we need to work on if we are going to move closer to realizing the aspirations and the beauty that is in chapter 7. Let's go to chapter 8. And as I go to chapter 8 now, let me say the following. From chapter 1 to chapter 7, the first 7 chapters of our Constitution, what you see there is that you see the principles and the pillars of our Constitution. After chapter 7, now when we go to chapter 8, we go to the legislature. Chapter 9, the executive. Chapter 10, the judiciary. Chapter 11, devolved government. Chapter 12, public finance. Chapter 13, the public service. Then we go to 14, the national security. Then we go to 15, commissions and independent officers. So you see that the first 7 chapters are so important because the rest of the chapters are only there to implement chapter 1 to 7. Every office that is established after, from chapter 8, chapter 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all those institutional frameworks that we established there are there to implement and uphold and protect and promote the aspirations and the values of the people of Kenya that you see in chapter 1 on the sovereignty of the people and supremacy of the constitution, all the way to representation of the people that is in chapter 7. What you see after chapter 8 is the operationalization of the officers that will implement the dreams of the people that are in chapter 1 to 7. So chapter 8 is on the legislature. How has the legislature performed since 2013? Oh my, oh my. Now this has been a disaster. It has been a disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, the legislature, both Senate and the National Assembly in Kenya, if last week is anything to go by, where members of parliament stand and say, the president asked us to pass this bill, we gave it to him. He asked us to pass this bill, we gave it to him. So therefore, members of parliament do not think that they exist to represent the people, to legislate in the national interest and to oversight the executive. No, they look at their job as that of giving the executive and the president whatever he requires to rule. To rule. Yet chapter 6 under leadership and integrity says authority given to a state or a public officer is not to rule, but to serve. Please read Article 73 and read Article 75 of our Constitution for you to see that actually our legislature is the problem. I give them 2 out of 10. Chapter 8, the legislature. There are structural problems therein which we need to discuss at a constitutional conference. And I hope that KCPF, I don't know whether our chair is here, I hope that KCPF can actually call for a national constitutional conference to audit the constitution 15 years later. This is what we should be calling for. Because the legislature in Kenya has performed disastrously under the new constitution. They have actually violated every spirit and principle of our constitution, especially when it comes to the Article 10 on the principles and values of our country. Now, let me go to chapter 9 on the executive. How wonderful is chapter 10, chapter 9 on the executive. It is awesome, it is glorious, it is meticulous. Remember that we wanted to deal with the imperial presidency. So we were very thorough in the design of I say we were thorough because I was part of the process. I actually went to jail, including committing maximum prison, fighting for this constitution, which we promulgated. I have shared this before. So it's not news. So we were thorough in terms of our design of chapter 9 on the executive, so that we can be able to clip the presidency and bring it under the constitution. But what have we witnessed? What we have witnessed is actually the opposite of what we intended. We've now realized that actually the presidential system of government is a total disaster in Africa. Not just in Africa. I'm speaking as a political scientist when I tell you that a presidential system of government is a disaster, and there's no way you can be able to clip the powers and the wings of an elected president. It's not possible. That is why practically the whole of Europe, except for France, is under a parliamentary system of government. There is something to learn here, that a presidential system of government is very difficult to govern, to clip and put the president under the check of parliament and the judiciary. Ladies and gentlemen, in our country, when a judge makes a ruling that is not favorable to the executive, such a judge suffers immediate reprisal. His security is withdrawn. Such a judge is transferred to an outstation out there in nowhere, so that they can know that the executive, if it is not pleased with you, you will meet reprisals. The same problem has been faced by our independent officers like the Controller of Budget and the Auditor General. You've seen what has happened to our commissions, constitutional commissions, and what has happened to those commissions that do not toe the line and dance to the tune of the executive. Their budget is slashed, and most of them are surviving on donor money. They are completely unable to perform their constitutional mandate except to pay salaries and put some petrol in their cars. All the other money comes from donor money. These are constitutional commissions. Ladies and gentlemen, the executive under the Constitution can only score 3 out of 10. Let's go to 10. Let's talk about the judiciary in our Constitution. The judiciary is the only chapter under this Constitution that can score above 5 out of 10. It is only the judiciary which scores 6 out of 10, because judges and magistrates in our country have really tried to do their work, even under hostile conditions. They are the only ones who have tried to do something, because the Constitution has insulated them. Even if there is executive overreach, they have tried. You remember the Willy Mutunga judgeship at CJ. You remember the Maraga years, including nullification of a constitutional and an election that was not conducted in strict adherence to our Constitution. The judiciary is the only one which gets 6 out of 10. The other chapters have been a disaster. Let's go to chapter 11. Chapter 11 on devolved government. Devolved government. Ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and sisters, what can we say about the devolved governments? Very beautiful on paper, extremely revolutionary as an idea, which was very badly designed. I have written a whole article or several articles on devolved government. I can share for those who do not know that I am intending to run even for the Nairobi governorship. But I am not under any illusion that devolution in our country has not delivered the goods. My rating of how devolution has worked under the new Constitution is that they only scored 3.5 out of 10. 3.5 because a lot of the counties have tried to do roads, water there, some have done hospitals there, but the overall performance of devolved governments has been a disaster in the most part. And there are 5 main explanations, 5 main problems with devolved government, but today is not the night to go into detail. My rating of how county governments and devolved governments have worked is that we give them 3.5 out of 10. I'll come back to the 5 reasons why county devolved government has not worked according to the envisioned dream and vision that we had in 2010. actually right from Bomas all the way to when we made the Constitution in 2010 and did the promulgation. So I give it 3.5 out of 10, and then go to Public Finance, chapter 12. My brothers, chapter 12 has been the core problem of our constitutional implementation since 2010. This chapter has been abused grossly. It is the reason the Gen Zs last year, 2024, rose up in arms against the executive and the legislature. Because chapter 12, which governs taxation, which governs public finance management, which governs, investment in the basic rights of our people. All those aspirations that are in all the other chapters are pegged and dependent on how we perform with chapter 12 of our constitution. And we have done so badly under the public finance chapter of our constitution. It has been a disaster. The looting, the corruption that has been going on, all has to do with chapter 12 on public finance. It has been a disaster. So therefore, so that I can be able to allow the rest of us to come into this conversation, I'll go to chapter 13 under public service and say that the public service has been riddled with incompetence, tribalism. It has been riddled with a lot of capture and misuse since 2013. So we gained for ourselves an important chapter on public service, the principles which are not being observed. So therefore, that's why KCPF needs to call for that important National Constitutional Conference to audit how we fared on. My own rating is that the public service under the Constitution can only get 4 out of 10. Then we go to national security, chapter 14, and we are talking about the performance of our National Intelligence Service, the performance of our National Police Service, the performance of our Kenya Defense Forces. Oh, things were going on well until we decided to go back on the promise in 2014, a year after President Uhuru had been sworn into office with William Ruto as the deputy. There was a Security Laws Amendment Omnibus Act that was passed in Parliament, which reversed, eroded, and watered down the Constitution as a whole. So therefore, I want to say that am I still audible? I was disturbed by a phone call that was coming in. I hope I can still be heard. Wakili confirmed that I can be heard?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so I have just one more chapter to conclude. So we've done national security organs. Let me tell you that we started off very well. We started to establish the National Police Service under the Constitution. We did the defense forces very meticulously, and we started to see a new sense of life into these institutions until the Omnibus Amendment Act of 2014, so-called the Security Laws Amendment Bill, which was passed by Parliament within a record time, and it transferred all the powers to the president to appoint this director of NIS, to appoint that director of DCI, to appoint the inspector general. That is exactly what the Constitution said must not be done. Yet Parliament actually sabotaged the Constitution by the amendments they instituted in 2014. Your guess, your judgment, I leave it to your judgment But I have to say that apart from chapter 12, the national security chapter 14 is the other chapter that has performed so badly. I want to rate it at 2.5. It has performed worse than the executive. It has performed worse than the executive. If it was not for the KDF, we would have actually given them 1.5. But for KDF and what they have been able to do and try to keep their sanity and their independence, we give it 2.5. But the security organs of our country, especially after last year, in how the National Intelligence Service was now coming into the abductions, into the policing aspects of our country, we have to say that it has been regrettable how the organs of security have performed under the Constitution. They have actually acted unconstitutionally. They have been an affront to the Bill of Rights. They have been an affront to the independence of our Constitution. They have been an affront to the judiciary. They have been an affront to practically all the other chapters of our Constitution. It's regrettable. Let us conclude with the chapter 15 on commissions and independent officers. I've already touched on this. I will not deal with the chapter 16, 17, and 18 because those ones are, chapter 16 is on amendments to the Constitution. You remember how the Constitution protected itself against the BBI constitutional amendments. Chapter 17 is on general provisions on the implementation of the Constitution, and chapter 18 is on transitional and consequential provisions, which have already been spent. So there's not much to discuss under chapter 16, 17, and 18. I decided to keep it 15 chapters after 15 years. So my last chapter is chapter 15 on commissions and independent officers. The Constitution, as we were designing it, we knew that the imperial presidency and the colonial, destructive, anti-people, anti-values state needed to be deconstructed and rebuilt. In the commissions and the independent officers were actually going to be the bypass for the surgery that was needed. But what has happened is that the executive and parliament have quickly ganged together and decapitated the commissions and the independent officers. So the independent officers have struggled to do their job, but they have actually been rendered toothless. First of all, because of the questionable characters that have been appointed to the commissions over the years, and the questionable budget allocation and the legislative measures that have been taken by the executive and the legislature to ensure that they dehorn and decapitate the commissions and the independent officers. So the commissions get 5 and the independent officers because they have tried to do their job, but they have not been allowed to do their job. So that's my rating of how the Constitution has been performed. And I want to conclude by saying that this exercise was going to benefit greatly if Dr. Roslyn Odede, our former chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, was alive, because I did this work with her on the 10th anniversary of promulgation, which is 5 years ago. I wish she was alive today so that we can be able to present this work. You remember we did the presentation together at Fungamano when we had the religious leaders conclave, what do we call convocation, the church's convocation at Fungamano. And we actually have seen that some of the chapters have gotten worse over the period of time. I want to pause there and return the mic back to Wakili Evans and request that as many of you as those who can please follow me on Twitter, on X, and so that we can be able to reach many more people and share this information with them. Thank you very much. Asante.
Thank you very much, Cyprian. I think you have done justice to this very important topic on the hits and misses of the Constitution 2010, 15 years later. And you have basically helped us to unpack the 15 chapters of the Constitution. And I would not love to regurgitate whatever you have mentioned, but probably your quick comments on NGCDF, because it has been a heated debate on whether to include NGCDF in the Constitution to basically kind of securitize it, kind of make it law that now the NGCDF is part and parcel of the Constitution. So I'd love to get your quick comments on that before we then proceed to open up to the audience, the patient audience, which has been listening to us. And also, let us remember, before Cyprian probably responds to the aspect of NGCDF, that Kenya Christians Professionals Forum is the one hosting this particular X-Space and this very important discussion. So remember to always follow. Remember to follow me also, Evans Kira floor, and probably quickly comment on NGCD, and we'll open it up to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my internet was shaky a bit at a certain stage. And thank you very much for those who have followed me on X. And I still do not know whether our chairman made it to this call. Our chairman, Wakili Charles Kanjama, I would have loved to hear if he was here. I am also very happy to see Javas Bigambo. Javas has newly been appointed to the very important a team of those who are to work out on the compensation of those who died, who were injured during the demonstrations and so on since, since 2017. Thank you, Javas, for finding time to be here. Now, let me comment on NGCDF. I've also seen Ambassador Engineer Julius Okara, our father in the people's, processes in this country. Thank you so much, Ambassador Okara. Now, you have asked a very important question. If you go to Article 6 of our Constitution, it says very clearly that there are only two levels of government. That is Article 6, not Chapter 6, but Article 6, under the Republic. The Constitution goes on to tell us that you cannot establish government unless as provided for by this Constitution. And now you are seeing a very strange level of government that has been introduced by an act of parliament called NGCDF, National Government Constituent Development Fund. And we are asking, whose fund is this? If you have listened to my brother Omtata Okoiti, Senator for Busia, you heard me say that the two chapters that have most been abused and that have caused us severe problems have been Chapter 12 on public finance and Chapter 14 on the national security. These are the two organs and chapters that have been violated so that we can return the country to the imperial presidency. Because there are no other spaces for abuse of the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, except through public finance and through the national security. So these are the two chapters that have been abused most. When it comes to the national government CDF, it is unconstitutional and must not be allowed to exist by parliamentarians sneaking back this animal that is unconstitutional so that they can continue to abuse public finances and continue to award themselves money that they steal and enrich themselves. There are very many friends of mine who are members of parliament and they don't like me a lot. But we have to remember that ours is to preserve and uphold the national interest at all times, not to please the president or to please members of parliament or to please governors. NGCDF is unconstitutional, shall remain unconstitutional, and will be unconstitutional at all times in the Republic of Kenya. It has to be dissolved. All the functions have to be returned to the two levels of government, and all the resources that are put at the disposal of the NGCDF committees and MPs must be allocated through the budget so that we do not have a situation where 14 billion shillings of our money is doled out to give powers to members of parliament so that they can be bribed and therefore not to oversight the executive. It has to be stopped and must not be allowed to function in the Republic of Kenya as long as this constitution is still in force and it has not been dethroned, except through executive and legislative backdoor. That is what has kept this impunity to continue in our country. It is a bribe that is given to members of parliament so that they can allow the executive to slaughter the constitution and violate the rights, steal our money, and destroy our sovereignty. It's a bribe. We cannot allow that a bribe continues to be there, so that MPs are given power to dole out bursaries, to dole out money to police stations, to dole out money to I don't know what else. This must not be allowed. We must go to Article 6 and uphold the Constitution, which tells us in Article 6 that there are only two levels of government in the Republic of Kenya. This third level is unconstitutional and is actually an affront to our democracy and to the republic. Thank you. That's my response. It must be stopped at all costs.
All right. Thank you so much for that succinct response, direct to the point. I think it's important that we also put the NGCDF on the balance and also view it from the aspect that Cyprian has helped us to decipher and see. So I think at this point in time, we're going to then engage our lovely audience on their thoughts, reflections on the same, any questions on the hits and misses of Katiba. So let us remember to keep our contributions brief and focused. The host will allow you can request the mic and then proceed to give your contribution. Remember, keep it brief and focused so that then we can end this around 9:10. So in the meantime, I see a question in our comments. Yes, this it's their job to interpret the law, isn't it? So I'm not sure whether Cyprian, you've gotten the question.
No, please repeat it for me.
The question is, why didn't the judiciary reverse those parliamentary constitutional overreaches? I think this was probably when you are discussing the legislature.
Yes.
It's their job to interpret the law, isn't it? It's by
yes,
John Seramani.
I'll come back to that. Let's hear more.
Okay. So I'm not sure that
Okay,
the
then
mic.
probably if there isn't a speaker or somebody intervening, let me just make a comment that
All right.
the judiciary as that's why I gave them 6 out of 10, because some judges have done a wonderful job. Some judges, especially in the Supreme Court, have been a disaster, have been a total disaster. And that is why I think that an amendment to the Constitution is so important, to say that judges at the Supreme Court can only be there for a maximum of 10 years. This thing of leaving Supreme Court judges to be there forever is a bad practice, and they have actually turned the Supreme Court into a kiosk, if I can call it that. It is their kiosk. They even say so and so cannot appear before us. Imagine. The Supreme Court has become such a detriment to that's why they could not get marks higher than 6 out of 10, because the Supreme Court has been a spoiler to the judiciary when you look at it in its totality. But let me say this, that the lower court, is it lower? No, the high court, as in many occasions, actually struck out a lot of the amendments and a lot of bills that have been brought, but that have been passed by Parliament, and they have declared them unconstitutional. Even in last year's the Finance Act saga, the 2023 finance bill, the High Court found that the bill was itself unconstitutional in very many scores. They actually even ruled that the housing levy was unconstitutional, etc. Except that the Supreme Court said, no, it's not unconstitutional. No, it's not unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court has actually reversed a lot of very progressive, even in the UMTATA applications. You will see that the High Court agrees that these bills and amendments to the law are unconstitutional, including the public finance management, including the security laws amendments of 2014. But when it goes slightly higher, then the judges say, no, the president can be allowed, to appoint. The president can be allowed to appoint the Director General of the NIS without going through the processes that had been articulated, including the interference with the Kenya Defense Forces. So the High Court has done a wonderful job. If I was rating the High Court alone, probably I would have given them 8.5 out of 10. But because of the Supreme Court and some cases in the Court of Appeal, they cannot be able to get higher than 6 in totality. So yes, there are many instances where the High Court has said these amendments run and fly in the face of the Constitution. But when the government takes these things higher, then you start seeing that the Court of Appeal, and in most instances, the Supreme Court tends to agree with the executive that those amendments are okay. They are there to enhance the implementation of the Constitution, etc. So that has been the crisis. And that is why I'm still insisting that the Kenya Christian Professionals Forum should activate a national mechanism of holding a national constitutional conference to audit this constitution in its totality, because the implementation has not been good overall. In my calculations, the overall performance and implementation of the Constitution, I give it 4 out of 10. Actually, 3.5 out of 10. That is the collective result when you look at how faithful has been the implementation. And for us, we know that those who are not faithful, those who do not have faith, cannot please God. So we must demand for the faithful implementation of the Constitution. And that's the movement that we must now build to ensure that the Constitution is implemented faithfully. Thank you very much. Let me pause there.
All right. So I see John Seramani. I don't know if you have a question, John Seramani.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Thank you to Cyprian and also the Kenyan Christian professionals. I just have a very brief question. I'd like to pick your mind on this. You've talked about independent offices, and personally, from my own reading, I'm aware the argument made by James Madison in Federalist number 51 that the structure is everything. That how you structure the powers is really the Bill of Rights. It's a thing that makes it work. So I'd like to understand your thinking, or the thinking even of the committee of experts behind creating all these new positions, calling them independent. I feel, it's part of the problem, even though some of them have performed well. But what was the thinking behind it? Was it that simply making it independent or calling it independent would actualize it, or what was their thinking? Thank you.
Wakili Evans, can I go on?
Yes, kindly proceed.
That's a very important intervention, John Sremani. The Federalist number 51, and if you go to the Federalist number 73, then you see that powers have been allocated, the sword to the executive, the pass, that's money, to the legislature, and then the court rulings and the determinations have been given to the judiciary. That is how the concept of separation of powers was conceived, and under the Federalists, this is spoken about very, very well. So yes, design is important. The thinking goes back actually to the National Convention Assembly, NCA. And if you look at the first draft that we made in 1995, which was co-created by LSK, 4Cs, and the churches. That's the proposed model constitution, which was blue in color for those of you. 1995 is many years ago for most of the listeners, here today. But the idea was that if you are going to deconstruct the colonial state and remake it so that it is actually a state that is in the interest of the nation and of the people, you cannot rely on the executive and the legislature to be the ones that are going to deconstruct the state, because left on their own, they do not want to deconstruct the colonial state. So the question was then, what else is there that can be used to deconstruct and to put a leash and a tether to this rabid dog, this wild dog that is called the Kenyan state that we inherited, which had destroyed more lives than the lives that were destroyed by the colonial state. Most people do not know that the post-independent Kenyan state has destroyed more lives than the lives that were destroyed by the colonial state. That's how bad things are. So we had to, and Paddy Onyango, for those of you who know him, will give you the 36 issues we had with the former constitution. So we had to come to the conclusion that we needed a bypass surgery, like the one that was done to President Clinton, where his heart was put on the table and he was given machines to keep pumping as the heart was being, operated on to remove the clots and the things that were ailing. So we needed a bypass surgery of the state. And this was only going to be possible if you create new organs, new institutions outside the executive and outside the legislature, so that they become the system through which the citizens use to contain and control the executive and the legislature. What were these? Independent officers and, number two, the constitutional commissions. So if you go to Article 59 on the Constitutional Commission, there, for example, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights and Equality, which was split into 3 commissions, which was actually a bad idea. You see, the idea was that this was supposed to be a very active, nearly executive organ under the Constitution, which is going to superintend, oversight, and check the legislature and check the executive in the performance of their duties. In terms of administration of the law, in terms of equality and non-discrimination, in terms of human rights upholding, especially the economic and social rights. But you see, we did not design Chapter 12 properly. Chapter 12 is the one on public finance. That is where we did not cure the problem. And I have been telling friends of mine, including Mzee Okara, who is on this call, that if you don't amend this constitution, you can't implement it. Because Chapter 12 on public finance, which still leaves money in the hands of the president and the executive, doing this together with parliamentarians. Unless you remove money from the hands of these gentlemen and ladies in the executive by amending Chapter 12 to provide for the National Sovereign Wealth Fund, number one. Number two, split the treasury so that there is a national treasury and there is a county devolved government treasury. And then ensure that the president does not appoint the head of the treasury. The head of treasury is supposed to be independent of the executive. Let the president appoint his minister for finance, but not the head of treasury, because treasury is a constitutional function. It's not a political appointment. So there are things that have to be done to ensure that constitutional commissions and independent officers are not starved of money the moment they start biting. Because that's what the executive has used and the legislature. Any commission that starts to bite, like the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, when they start to bite and say, no, the people who have been killed by the police are not 16, but they are 39. No, the violations are this and that. When the executive realizes that a constitutional commission is doing its work, even IBC, what do? They starve IBC of money. So that then things become so tough for IBC. And what does Treasury say? We will procure the kits. We will procure the servers for you. We will procure things for you. And if you are desperate and you want to conduct an election, what do? You leave it to Treasury to procure for you things. That is how elections are rigged in Kenya. So my answer to you is that the designers of the Constitution erred in the sense that they made a big design mistake of creating independent officers and constitutional commissions without curing the problem in Chapter 12 of ensuring that the National Treasury is not at the behest of the executive, at the behest of the president and the legislature. Because when MPs want to increase their salaries, they say they will increase them. When the Salaries and Remuneration Commission says no, they say remove these people from office because they are not giving us the money that we want. So how do we cure this problem? We have to go to chapter 12. If we cure that problem at chapter 12, then you will see immediately that the independent offices and constitutional commissions will have teeth and they will do their work without fear or favor. And that is how we will be able to build the country, and the values that are in Article 10 will come to life. Without that, these officers are going to be starved of money. They will be, you remember even when Maraga and the Maraga Supreme Court nullified the election, you remember Justice Muilu's bodyguard being shot right in the open on Ngong Road to warn them that, you cannot be able to make judgments as independently as you think. We are going to withdraw the police and we will leave you to be attacked by goons. So that is what we have to deal with to ensure that the executive and the legislative impunity in this country does not continue.
All right. Thank you so much for that particular response. And then probably before I yield the floor to anybody else who has probably reactions or reflections on what we have been discussing this far, there has been this committee that has been set up by the president to basically compensate those victims who are there in the 2024 protest and also in the 2025 protest. So I can't see Javas or Bigambo anywhere. So probably would love to also get your comments on the same. Is this the most appropriate route to follow? What did the Constitution envision probably on this particular aspect of protest? So you can just share your views on the same,
Yes.
even before we yield the floor to the audience. Yeah.
And I'll do it very briefly. You see, it is not the president who should be allowed to set up these kinds of instruments to do restitution and reparations and compensation and things like that. No, it cannot be the executive. Why? Because if we allow the executive to do that, then the president will be ordering the police and security agencies to shoot and kill protesters and then compensate them using our taxes. The whole concept, when we teach transitional justice, the money that goes to reparations is broader than compensation. Reparations is a very serious term, which is not compensation, monetary compensation of lives. No. Reparations is a deep concept of transitional justice, which says that the people who violated the rights of Kenyans are the ones who should pay for the lives that were lost. Do you know why? So that people stop hurting the rights of other people, taking the lives of other Kenyans because they have been given Kenyan guns. Can you imagine you give somebody a Kenyan gun, then he uses it to kill a Kenyan, then you use Kenyan taxes to pay for the one that has been killed? What stops the police from killing 150 next month when there's a new demonstration? There's nothing stopping them. The idea will be kill and use taxes to pay for the lives that have been destroyed. That is how you actually consolidate impunity in the system. And I wish Jevas was here because he needs to hear this, because I've already written to Mr. Professor Makao Mutua, who we thought was a professor of human rights and he understands transitional justice, but he has actually come out as an illiterate gentleman when it comes to these issues of transitional justice and ensuring that there's non-repetition. I hope my listeners have heard that if you allow these to pass, then expect the police to kill many more in future demonstrations in violation of Article 37, in a violation of our Constitution. Why? Because the president will award more money as compensation for those who have been killed. There will be no punishment. There will be no consequence for those who kill Kenyans for merely exercising their constitutional rights. I think I want to stop it there. My point has been made.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, we wish Javas was here because he's part and parcel of the committee that was appointed by the president to foresee the reparations, or rather the compensation of the victims of the 2024-2025 protest. So I'm not sure whether there is anybody we are locking out. Feel free to ask any question based on the hits and misses of the Constitution 2010. We have been able to navigate through the 15 chapters of the Constitution, also have deep reflections on the independent offices, also have deep reflections on the NGCDF and probably how viable it will be to include it in the Constitution. Equally, we've had a discussion on the compensation and also what compensation actually means in the human rights sense. So at this point in time, I'm not sure. I don't see any question in the comments. I don't see anybody else who has equally requested for the mic. So I think as we even bring this to a close, because we envisioned to bring this to a close at around 9:10, we have had a lot of probably, what do we call it, curtailing in the digital spaces, because the Gen Z have come out as a generation that really puts in high regard communication and equally expressing themselves freely and bringing out the ills in the society. So your brief comments on the freedom of expression. To what extent should the government then interfere with the freedom of expression? Is it right to basically air out our views uncontrollably? What are your general comments on the same, Cyprian?
Thank you very much, Wakili, once again. And I want to say that as we are speaking, as we are looking towards Wednesday to mark the 15 years of the 15th anniversary of promulgation, let me sadly announce to all of us that Kenya's constitution is basically suspended. This country is being governed not by the constitution, but by executive presidential decree. What the president wants is what goes, is what is going to be done. Not what the constitution says ought to be done and how it ought to be done. And so this constitution has been violated so many times, particularly under the rights and freedoms of association, freedoms of expression, freedoms of, even the right to picket, the right to petition government itself has been outlawed by the executive. The executive in this country, Murkomen, and the president himself, Kindiki, who is a constitutional lawyer, and all these people, they you saw a minister of energy saying that Parliament cannot discuss the president and they cannot be able to remove the president. They cannot impeach him. He said, who are you in Kenya to think about impeaching the president? Who gave you the power? The Constitution of Kenya 2010 is technically dead. It's not in operation. It is not being followed by state and public officers. You've had members of parliament bringing bills to parliament to stop Kenyans from demonstrating and going to picket near parliament. So the question is, where are those Kenyans supposed to picket? If they are not supposed to go to State House and they're not supposed to go to parliament, where exactly are they supposed to go? To River Road? To Ngara Market? What is the meaning of petitioning government? If Njeri petitions government by opening a portal where people can send emails on the finance bill, and then she is picked and held incommunicado for days, what is her crime? She has facilitated the expression and the giving of views of the people to petition their government. So therefore, in general, we have to come to the conclusion that we are in very serious trouble. We are in very serious trouble because our constitution is suspended, is not the instrument that is guiding governance in this country. It's the views of individuals who are in power that matter and that carry the day, not the constitution and the laws of our country. The rule of law as a principle is not being upheld in this country. This is what should worry us, especially as we go towards the 2027 general election. Thank you very much. And therefore, we must wake up again just for one thing, to say it very loudly for the whole world to hear, that Kenyans have a right to express themselves according to the constitution that they promulgated on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, on WhatsApp, on public roads. Everywhere Kenyans want to express their views, they can and must do it. If we do not reclaim that power, then the sovereignty of the people is technically null and academic. It's null and void, and it's academic. It only exists on paper, but does not exist in fact.
All right. David, you've requested a few.
And I'm still requesting for those who can follow me to follow me. I will follow you back so that we can continue with this conversation online. David, please go on. David needs to unmute.
David, you can unmute and yes. I'm not quite sure whether his network is stable because it's still connecting. but we have had deep reflections of the Constitution. And I remind us all that we can never finish this discussion because it's a very, very central discussion to our country. And to further this discussion, we're going to have Katiba Day on the 27th of August, 2025. I was almost saying 2010, but it's 2025 at Taifa Hall. So we are all invited so that we can then have this very important discussion and continue basically dissecting the hits and misses of the Constitution 2010. And a very splendid way forward has been fronted to us by our able Cyprian, that we need to have basically an audit of the Constitution 2010, and he has put the Kenya Christians Professionals Forum to task to basically help us understand so far what has been done, what has not been done, what needs to be done in the foreseeable future. We have also rated the various chapters of the Constitution. Well, the best scoring is the judiciary. According to Cyprian, it has a 6 out of 10, and he has given valid reasons for that. And really, this is what we need to continue with so that we can have a clear picture of where we are as a country. So I'm not sure whether David is still with us. If not, it's 1 minute to 9:10. I do urge us all to continue following KCPF, the Kenya Christians Professionals Forum, for updates regarding Katiba Day, and equally updates regarding the various thematic areas that Kenya Christians Professionals Forum brings to us. Talk of matters governance, talk of matters family, talk of matters integrity and accountability. Let us follow the Kenya Christians Professionals Forum for more updates and insights. Equally, let us follow Cyprian. He did mention earlier that he's also going to be running for office in 2027. We wish him the very best. You can equally follow me, Evans Kiragu, so that then you can continue keeping the discussion alive. So probably, Cyprian, you can give us your closing remarks since you have lost David, and I'm viewing the comments and I see no question in the comments. You can give your closing remarks. And yes, proceed.
Thank you very much, all of you who found time to be on this space. Our Constitution, as we started by saying, is a product of struggle, and it is there to help us to achieve the Kenya Bora Tuitakayo vision that we find in the first stanza of our national anthem. I have to keep taking us there because the 6 aspirations of the people of Kenya: haki iwe ngao na mlinzi, undugu, amani, uhuru, raha, which we said as Christians, it means joy, the joy of the Lord, which is our strength, as we see in the book of Nehemiah. And then number 6, ustawi, prosperity. These are the 6 collective aspirations of the people of Kenya. And they cannot be realizable if we do not uphold and implement the Constitution of Kenya faithfully. Unfortunately, the Constitution has been implemented in breach. It has been implemented to violate the very principles, the virtues, the values of our Constitution. And we've gone through the 15 chapters out of 18, and we have seen clearly that all the chapters have been very badly implemented. You know, starting from the supremacy and the sovereignty and supremacy of the Constitution in chapter 1, all the way to the commissions, constitutional commissions and independent officers. Some of the worst chapters we saw is the national security chapter, is the public finance chapter, which we scored at 2 3.5 out of 10, meaning that we have to do a lot more if we are going to realize the vision and the aspirations of the people of Kenya that are in the first stanza of the national anthem. So I thank you very much. I continue to call on all of us to spread this civic education to as many fellow friends, family members, workmates, and across the country, so that the country will know that we are stuck and stagnating because we are not implementing our constitution faithfully. We are doing very badly when it comes to the implementation of our constitution. At 3.5 out of 10, that is a D plus, maybe even a D in terms of performance. It means that unless we take the performance of implementing the constitution faithfully to 68 or to 67, which is B, we cannot see transformation in our country. We have a transformative constitution, but it is not being implemented faithfully. That's the problem. And the solution is that we have to rise up again. Our national anthem in stanza 2, it says, na tujitoe, that we must stand up and stand for the values and aspirations of our country, particularly defend our constitution as provided for in Article 3. May God bless you. I thank you. Let us call for the National Constitutional Conference to audit the implementation of our constitution. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you so very much, Cyprian, for helping us unpack the hits and misses of the Constitution 2010. And indeed, we have unpacked the victories, the shortcomings through our constitutional journey. And on behalf of the Kenya Christians Professionals Forum, I would love to sincerely thank you for helping us to basically have this national reflection. And also, the work of constitutionalism is never finished, but with each and every step, each voice, each action, we edge closer to the Kenya that we always envision. Let us live here resolved to guard Katiba, to embody its principles, and to pass on to the next generation a nation rooted in justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for also engaging us in this very important forum, in this very important discussion. Looking forward to seeing you on Katiba Day on the 27th of August 2025 at Taifa Hall, the University of Nairobi. And have yourself a lovely, lovely, lovely night. Thank you so much.